The harsh winds of Endora 5 whip against Captain John Thorne's face as he trudges through the ruins of what was once a thriving city. His boots crunch over shattered glass and debris, the remnants of a world caught in the unrelenting grip of war. The sky above is a sickly green, choked with smoke from distant battles. John moves with the precision of a seasoned soldier, scanning the landscape, rifle always at the ready. His mission is simple: gather intel on enemy movements and report back. No unnecessary engagements. The planet is deathly quiet, save for the distant echoes of artillery. It's the kind of silence that unnerves even veterans like John. This world, ravaged by years of conflict, is a graveyard now. The interstellar war between humans and the alien coalition has left scars on everything, and Endora 5 has become nothing more than a battleground. As John pushes deeper into the ruins, his visor scans the area, highlighting potential threats in the distance. Nothing immediate. He relaxes just a bit, though his muscles remain coiled, ready for action at any moment. Suddenly, something flickers on his HUD, movement in the shadows. He pauses, eyes narrowing. He's cautious, moving silently toward the source. His rifle rises, finger hovering near the trigger. A faint sound, soft, like a whimper. He edges closer, pulse steady but heightened. As he rounds a corner, his eyes lock onto the figure hiding in the rubble. Small, trembling. Not a soldier. A girl. Alien, but unmistakably young. Yari is hunched behind a collapsed building, her body covered in the dust of the fallen city. Her once bright eyes are dim, filled with exhaustion and fear. Her clothes, tattered remnants of a culture long forgotten in this war, hang loosely on her frail frame. She looks barely able to stand, her thin arms hugging herself for warmth. Her skin, a pale shade of lavender, is marred with bruises and cuts. Her breathing is shallow, eyes darting around like a cornered animal. John watches her for a moment, calculating. She's one of them, the enemy. He's been trained to see her kind as threats, soldiers, or collaborators. But there's no fight in her. No weapon, no tactical advantage. She's just scared. His grip on the rifle tightens, his instincts screaming at him to walk away. To leave her. That's the mission, after all, no distractions, no liabilities. But she's barely more than a kid, and it's clear she's been abandoned. Left here to die, caught in a war she had no part in. He exhales sharply, lowering his weapon but keeping it ready, just in case. He steps closer, slowly, cautiously, trying not to startle her. She recoils slightly, eyes widening in panic, but she's too weak to flee. Easy, he murmurs, his voice low and calm. I'm not gonna hurt you. She doesn't respond, probably doesn't understand him, but she doesn't run. John kneels, scanning her for injuries. She looks malnourished, dehydrated. How long has she been out here? Days? Weeks? She tries to speak, her voice barely a whisper, alien words that he doesn't understand. John glances around. He knows they don't have time. Human patrols are sweeping the area, and alien forces aren't far behind. The smart thing to do is leave her. She's a liability. She's not his problem. But as he looks at her, trembling, alone, something inside him shifts. She's just a kid, left to die by her own people. And the humans, his people, aren't any better. He knows what the orders would be: leave her. She's not worth the risk. Yet he can't do it. He can't leave her behind like this. He's seen enough death in this war. He's not about to let an innocent girl be another casualty, no matter what species she is. He curses under his breath, weighing the consequences. If his superiors found out, there'd be hell to pay. But he's been in this war long enough to know the line between right and wrong isn't as clear-cut as the higher-ups like to pretend. All right, kid, he says, reaching into his pack for a water canister. He hands it to her, and after a moment of hesitation, she takes it, sipping slowly. I don't know how we're getting out of this mess, but I'm not leaving you here. She watches him with cautious eyes, still not entirely trusting, but there's a flicker of something, hope, in her gaze. John rises, scanning the horizon. They don't have much time before patrols close in. He offers her a hand. She hesitates, then takes it. Together they move. John keeps her close, constantly checking their surroundings. The planet may be a wasteland, but it's far from empty. Both human and alien forces are scouring the area, and it won't be long before someone finds them. As they make their way through the wreckage, John's mind races. He's broken protocol, and there's no going back now. He knows he's risking everything, but he can't shake the feeling that he's done the right thing. No one should be abandoned like this, least of all a kid. They duck into a collapsed building for cover as a patrol flies overhead. Yari clings to John's side, fear etched on her face. He tightens his grip on his rifle, ready for a fight if it comes to that. But as the patrol passes, he realizes this is just the beginning. They're not just running from the enemy now, they're running from everyone. And they're running out of time. The rugged landscape of Endora 5 stretches out in every direction, treacherous and unforgiving. John leads the way, guiding Yari through the crumbling remains of a planet once full of life. They move swiftly, careful to stay out of sight, always one step ahead of the patrols combing the area. The air is thick with tension, every sound in the distance could be the approach of danger. Yari struggles to keep up at first, still weak from her time in the ruins, but as they push forward, her strength slowly returns. Her senses, sharper than any human's, help them avoid threats before John's scanner even detects them. She signals silently when danger is near, a flicker of movement in the distance, the hum of a nearby drone. They work together without speaking, a silent rhythm emerging between them, one born out of necessity. Despite the chaos around them, something shifts. Yari starts to rely on John, following his lead but offering her own abilities to help in subtle ways. She moves more confidently now, no longer the scared, fragile creature John first found. And John, though hardened by years of combat, begins to see her as more than just a burden. She's a survivor, like him, navigating a world that's cast them both aside. As they rest in a temporary shelter, John tries to piece together Yari's story. She speaks in broken phrases, her language mingling with basic human words. Slowly, the picture becomes clearer. Her people, once powerful allies in the war, were valued by humans for their unique skills, sensors that could detect enemy movement, abilities to manipulate certain frequencies of energy. But when the tide of the war shifted, and they failed to deliver a crucial victory, they were deemed expendable. The humans cut ties, and Yari's race was left to fend for themselves, abandoned in the midst of battle. John listens, his mind racing. There's more to this than simple strategy, or a failed alliance. He's been in the military long enough to recognize when something doesn't add up. Yari's people weren't just abandoned, they were set up. He doesn't say it aloud, but the realization gnaws at him. They press on, scavenging what they can from the ruins. At an abandoned human outpost, John stumbles upon an old terminal, still functional but barely. His curiosity piqued, he begins sifting through files, trying to find anything useful. Most of it is routine military data, troop movements, supply records, nothing of value. But then something catches his eye, encrypted messages, hastily hidden amidst the clutter. John's first instinct is to ignore it, but a gut feeling makes him pause. He calls Yari over. Her eyes widen as she studies the data, and with a few deft moves she begins to decode it. John watches in silence as the screen fills with information, much of it fragmented, but one thing becomes clear: a conspiracy. High-ranking officials, both human and alien, had orchestrated the abandonment of Yari's people. They weren't merely discarded because they were no longer useful. They were seen as a threat, a wild card that could upset the balance of power. And the war, it turns out, was being deliberately prolonged by those profiting from the chaos. John stares at the screen, his blood running cold. It was never about winning or losing, it was about control, about keeping the war going as long as possible. Yari's people had been in the way, so they were eliminated. And now, John realizes, he and Yari are in the crosshairs of the very forces they once fought for. Before he can process the weight of what they've uncovered, a faint hum reaches his ears. Yari tenses beside him. Enemy patrol. They're close, too close. There's no time to grab more supplies. John grabs Yari's arm, and they bolt from the outpost, racing into the dangerous wilderness, leaving behind the damning evidence but now fully aware of the dark truth behind their enemies. They've uncovered the conspiracy, but surviving long enough to do something about it is another matter entirely. The sound of pursuit grows louder, an ominous hum in the distance, signaling the approach of enemy patrols. John's senses sharpen, every movement calculated as he and Yari navigate the dangerous terrain. The hostile forces are closing in, both human and alien, determined to find them. The discovery of the conspiracy has made them targets, and John knows they're running out of time. He presses on, guiding Yari through the jagged cliffs and crumbling remains of long-forgotten cities. Each step is a calculated risk. His military training kicks in, helping them stay one step ahead of their pursuers. When they come close, John uses the terrain to his advantage, leading the patrols into dead ends, setting traps, and slipping away before the enemy even realizes they've been outmaneuvered. Yari, though still young and inexperienced, is quick to adapt. During a close skirmish, her heightened senses detect movement John misses, allowing them to avoid a direct confrontation. When they're forced to fight, she uses her abilities to disrupt enemy communications, causing confusion and giving John just enough time to strike. Together, they function like a well-oiled machine, both aware of each other's strengths and limitations. In one particularly close encounter, they barely escape an alien drone that nearly spots them. John shoots it down, but the sound draws the attention of a nearby patrol. Forced to flee through a narrow pass, they scramble over jagged rocks, Yari's agility matching John's combat-honed reflexes. Bullets whiz past them, explosions rock the ground beneath their feet, but they keep moving, determined not to be caught. After hours of running and fighting, they finally find a moment of respite in a small cave, hidden from view. The adrenaline subsides, replaced by exhaustion. Yari, still trembling slightly from the intensity of the chase, sits beside John. The air between them is heavy with unspoken thoughts, the weight of everything they've faced pressing down. John breaks the silence first, his voice low. He speaks about the war, the comrades he's lost, good men and women who believed they were fighting for a cause, only to be betrayed by the same system that discarded Yari's people. He talks about the moments he questioned it all, but kept going because it was the only thing he knew. Now, seeing the truth laid bare, he feels the anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. Not just at the enemies who hunt them, but at the leaders on both sides who play with lives as if they were pieces on a chessboard. Yari listens, her eyes softening. For the first time, she opens up about her family, her parents, her siblings, all taken from her in the chaos of the war. She had believed in the alliance between her people and the humans, had trusted that they would stand together. But when the humans abandoned them, her people scattered, and she was left behind. The betrayal cut deep, leaving her feeling more alone than ever. Until now. Their bond, forged in the fires of battle and shared suffering, deepens. Neither of them says it outright, but there's an unspoken understanding, they are all each other has now. And that's enough to keep them moving, to keep fighting. But John knows they can't run forever. The enemy will eventually catch up, and when they do, it won't just be a simple chase anymore. He needs a plan. We have to stop this, John mutters, more to himself than to Yari. She looks at him, confused. John explains his idea. They can't keep running, but they can expose the truth. The conspiracy they uncovered can't be buried if they broadcast it to the galaxy. If they can reach a nearby communication relay station, John can upload the encrypted files and send a message to anyone who will listen. It's a long shot, but it's the only shot they have. Yari hesitates, fear flickering across her face. The relay station is deep in enemy territory, heavily guarded by both human and alien forces. It's a suicide mission. But John is resolute. We have to try, he says, his voice steady. If we don't, all of this, everything we've been through, it's for nothing. With no other option, Yari nods. They make a silent pact. If this is the end, they'll go down fighting for something that matters. The journey to the relay station is tense. Every step feels like it could be their last. As they approach the facility, John's nerves are on edge. His instincts tell him something's off, but there's no turning back now. They push forward, carefully navigating the perimeter. Suddenly, the air around them shifts. Before John can react, they're ambushed. A squad of elite human soldiers emerges from the shadows, their weapons trained on John and Yari. There's no way out, no cover, no chance to run. They're cornered, trapped between the facility and a wall of heavily armed soldiers. John grits his teeth, preparing for a fight he knows he can't win. Yari's hand tightens around his arm, fear flashing in her eyes. The odds are impossible, but John refuses to surrender. This is it. The moment of truth. The ambush unfolds in a blur of movement and gunfire. John reacts instantly, pulling Yari behind the nearest cover as bullets ricochet off the rocks around them. The elite human squad advances with precision, their intent clear. They're here to kill, no questions asked. John knows he's outgunned, but retreat isn't an option. Not now. He signals to Yari, and she understands. As the enemy moves in, she focuses, using her unique abilities to disrupt their communications again. Static fills the air, and the soldiers hesitate, momentarily disoriented. It's all the opening John needs. He takes out the first soldier with a well-placed shot, then rolls to the side as return fire rains down on his position. The odds are grim. These soldiers are the best, trained to eliminate targets like him swiftly and efficiently. But John isn't just a soldier. He's a survivor. Years of combat have honed his instincts, and now, with Yari by his side, he fights with a purpose that goes beyond the mission. He fights for survival, for the truth they carry, and for the child who's become his responsibility. Yari's heightened senses alert them to incoming attacks just in time. She ducks, pulling John down with her as a barrage of gunfire hits where they stood moments before. Her abilities save them again, allowing John to reposition and counterattack, but it's still not enough. They're being pushed back, pinned down by superior numbers and firepower. John's mind races, scanning the terrain for any advantage. Then it hits him, the environment itself. The rocky terrain around them, though treacherous, could be used against the enemy. He gives Yari a quick glance, silently communicating his plan. They move in unison, retreating to a narrow ravine that forces the soldiers to funnel in, reducing their numerical advantage. As they enter the bottleneck, John sets off a small charge, causing a rock slide that takes out 2 more soldiers. The tide begins to turn. With Yari disrupting their tech and John using every ounce of his tactical experience, they begin to hold their ground. The remaining soldiers falter, their confidence shaken. One by one, John takes them down, until the battlefield is silent. The elite squad, once unstoppable, now lies defeated. There's no time to celebrate. They still have a mission to complete. Wiping sweat from his brow, John leads Yari toward the communication relay station. His body aches from the fight, but his mind is focused. They've made it this far, and they're not stopping now. At the station, John gets to work, pulling up the files they risked everything for. Yari watches, her eyes filled with hope and uncertainty. The truth about the conspiracy, the betrayal that led to the slaughter of her people, the war profiteers prolonging the conflict, it all rests in these encrypted files. John uploads the data to the relay system, his fingers moving swiftly across the controls. The broadcast begins, sending the truth out to anyone who's listening. Across the galaxy, human and alien forces alike receive the message. Screens flicker to life, showing the damning evidence of the corrupt faction that orchestrated the war for their gain. John steps back, watching as the message goes out. He knows this won't end the war overnight, but it's a start. The seeds of rebellion have been planted. The ranks of both sides will splinter as the truth spreads. Those in power will scramble to cover their tracks, but it's too late. The damage is done. For a moment, the station is quiet, the weight of what they've done settling over them. John turns to Yari, her eyes wide, as if she can't believe it's over. They've won, but victory feels bittersweet. The war will rage on for a while longer, but now there's a chance for real change. The sound of distant explosions snaps them back to reality. They've been here too long. It's time to go. They make their escape, slipping away from the station just as reinforcements arrive. John knows they can't stay on Endora 5 any longer. The broadcast has made them targets, but it has also given them hope. Yari sticks close to John, her trust in him complete. In her eyes, he's more than just a soldier, he's her protector, the one person who didn't abandon her when the rest of the galaxy did. As they move toward their extraction point, John considers their next steps. The galaxy is vast, and while the broadcast may bring about the end of the war, there's no guarantee of safety for them. But he made a promise, to himself and to Yari. He'll keep her safe, no matter what. Together, they board a small transport, leaving the war-torn planet behind. As the stars stretch out before them, John takes one last look at Endora 5 fading into the distance. There's no going back now, but that's fine. The future, uncertain as it is, feels brighter knowing they've done the right thing. Yari sits beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. The bond between them, forged in battle and betrayal, is stronger than ever. They may not know what lies ahead, but they'll face it together. The transport drifts into the vastness of space, carrying them toward an unknown destination. But for the first time in a long while, John feels a sense of peace. They've survived. And as long as they stick together, he knows they can survive whatever comes next. The galaxy may be a dangerous place, but humanity's strength, the resilience, loyalty, and unwavering belief in doing what's right, endures. And as long as they carry that with them, there's always hope for something better.